I'm just
At
texting her.
8:32, so you should have it. All set.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is February 29th, Leap Day. And this is the Design Review Committee. This open meeting of the Design Review Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending the COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 29th, 2023. All members of the Design Review Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. Lisa said she's in the waiting room.
She's in.
Yep. The act allows the Design Review Committee to meet entirely remotely, so as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda, unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. This meeting will not feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark McMenemy,
Here.
Dave Varon,
Here.
Lisa Maselli,
Here.
and Amy Paretsky's here. Staff, when I call your name, Lori Connors,
Here.
Bob Federico.
Here.
Okay. The chair will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name to make a presentation. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. It is now 8:36. And first on our agenda is, let's see, HKT and the design group for the fire station, Northborough Fire Station. I just want to thank the design team for meeting with us today and for all your effort you put into the project. I also want to thank staff and all the committees involved for volunteering their time to make this a successful project for the firefighters and the town of Northborough. I would like to welcome someone on your team who is going to speak to it. I was thinking we would start with a brief presentation. Was that what you were thinking, or?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm Amy Dunlap from HKT. I was planning on doing a very brief presentation, and then we have some drawings that we can reference as you have questions and comments.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I will share my screen if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, can you all see the presentation? Okay.
Yeah, I'll say.
Great. All right. So thank you for having us here today. As I said, I'm just going to do a very brief presentation just with highlighting some of the updates that you've seen in the package that we distributed. One of the biggest updates to the site plan since the last time we met with you was that we relocated the fire department staff parking on the site. When you saw the plan before, we had the parking along this drive over here. And after having a team meeting with the design team, we looked at moving the parking to the back of the site here opposite the apparatus bays. That allowed us to do a lot of things that were really beneficial to the project. It allowed us to create a little bit of a green area between the retaining wall and the parking on the west side of the site, which gives us a little bit of an area for site lighting, for EV charging, for snow storage. On the east side of the site, we have a larger planting area and a larger area for snow storage. The fire department parking is largely hidden by the building, being in the back of the site here. Because we had a little bit extra space, we were able to improve the sidewalk along the east wall of the building. And then because we had a little more room over here, the civil engineers are able to chase the grades back to the driveway here and reduce the length of the retaining wall that we need along the east side of the building. We're still showing the generator and the dumpster enclosure in the back behind the building, and then the transformer over hidden behind or partially obscured behind the building. We did get some questions since our last review, and we wanted to address about how we set the finished floor elevation of the building. Um, we do have a finished floor elevation of 302, which is what we're showing right now. That's all based on the movement of the apparatus. The apparatus bays are located here. And when we set the elevation for the building, we look at the grades out in the street, and we look at what a appropriate slope is for the fire trucks, these large trucks, including the ladder truck, to get out of the building to the street without having any issues. That sets the floor of the apparatus bay itself. We have doors both in the front of the building and in the back of the building for apparatus to exit. So that meant that the grade outside the back doors here also needs to be at 302. In addition to that, the fire department had requested a connection between the two parking lots. So there's a drive between the two parking lots so that if apparatus is ever exiting here and for some reason cannot get out this route, there's another route for them to exit the site in an emergency response situation. So, excuse me, in doing that, that meant that we had to factor the grades in this parking lot based on the floor elevation here, and we couldn't really set the floor elevations between the administration portion of the building and the apparatus portion of the building substantially different, as has been done in other projects. In addition, if we had done that, if we had abandoned this drive between the two sides of the building and had the floor elevations in the different portions of the building at different elevations, we would have had to add additional stairs, an additional elevator stop or a lift stop or something in order to make the connection between the two portions of the building handicap accessible. In your packet that we've submitted, we have the proposed drainage plan. I'm not going to present that at this time. The civil engineers are on the call, and if you have questions about that, they can address that during the question and answer period. Similarly, we've got an updated utility plan in the package. There was a question about what the bollards would look like around the transformer and the generator. These are dictated by the utility company. We do have a typical bollard detail that we're showing here to address those questions, but the spacing, the height and the size of them is all dictated by the utility companies. We have an updated landscape plan. Ray Dunitz, our landscape architect, is on the call, and during the question and answer, he can certainly talk about this too. We've got a plant list that's in the package. We have an additional bike rack that's been added to the drawings, some benches as you enter in the site off the street. We're showing a site sign located on the site, which is an LED sign that's proposed, which I will show details of in a minute. And then you can see all the plantings that have been developed around the site. In the package, you also see we have a photometric plan. The lighting for the site is a combination of pole lights around the parking areas and the driveways. We have some wall sconces mounted on the building between the apparatus bay doors and at pedestrian entries into the building. We also have some bollards in the walkways entering the building from the public parking area, and then also from the street. We have a couple of bollards lighting the walkway into the building. The photometrics show that all the light is contained within the property line this time. And then the light fixture cuts are shown on this drawing. We selected a pole light fixture that was sympathetic with some of the fixtures that are featured in the design review guidelines, and similarly a wall sconce that was sympathetic with that pole fixture, as well as a bollard that's in the same style. When we last met with you, there were some questions about the design of the retaining wall around the site and a request for us to look at alternate solutions and some creative solutions. We did do that. We presented, I think it was 5 or 6 different options to the committee for what we could do with that retaining wall. And we narrowed it down to a few options to continue our design work and to get some pricing. The design that was in the original submittal is this straight wall. We should say for any retaining wall that we do on the site, the west and east portions of the wall, because of their proximity to the property line, are going to require geogrid reinforcement in the soil. That is a polymer fabric that's placed horizontally in the soil at different elevations, and it increases the mass, the overall mass of the retaining wall, and gives it structural stability. Because of, as I say, the proximity to the property line, we have to have a straight wall in those areas, and we're going to require the geogrid to do that. In this scheme, we would also need the geogrid for the straight wall wrapping around the back of the building. We call it a straight wall. In reality, each of the blocks is set back a little bit as it increases in height. So the overall height of the wall at the high point in this corner is about 30 feet. But the wall itself actually steps back about 2'10". You could see a section of the wall here as those blocks step back. So one of the options we looked at was this combination of straight walls on the east and west, and then a batter wall in the south wall of the site. And in that case, the batter wall, each of those blocks that I was talking about, steps back a little bit further as it increases in height. So when you get to that 30-foot height difference in this corner of the building, the wall itself is about 17 foot 2.5 inches deep. And you can see that's this pink shaded area on the plans here. That's the wall as it steps back. So it takes up a little more area on the site itself. We did cut some sections through to give you an idea of what that would look like. This top section here is taken through the public parking lot at the highest point of the site. So you can see the scale of that wall in comparison to a person and a car, but you also see that that wall steps back considerably as you get up to the top of the wall. This section here is taken at the low point of the wall. So you see that the wall drops down considerably from one side of the site to the other. And then this section is taken right through the middle of the building here. This section is taken across the building, looking back at the wall. And you can see the difference in height from the high point to the low point. So that is the batter wall option. And since meeting with the committee last night, this is the option that they have directed us to proceed with at this time. We did look also at a batter and terrace wall option. So it was a combination of having these batter walls and then a terrace. You can see in the section down here, the terrace was about 10 feet above the ground level in the parking area, and we would have plantings in that area. One of the concerns with this option is because of the way the grades are, there was no way to get into that terrace area to maintain it other than with a ladder from the parking lot area. There's no direct connection from the grade at the upper area in order to do that. So any maintenance would have to be done via ladders from the parking area. You can see in the sections here what that would look like, again, compared to the scale of a person in a car and the planting beds. And you can see the planting beds in the distance here in this elevation. And then we also looked at having 2 terraces moving back. Again, straight walls on the east and west side, but 2 terraces. And because these terraces continue to step back on the site, this allowed us to create direct connections with the grade from the upper area. So maintenance would be able to be performed from grade from the upper portion of the hill without having to access these terraces with the ladder. This scheme right here consists of 3 12-foot high terrace walls, and each terrace is about 18 feet deep. So the overall height, when you get to this corner, you're getting back further into the site where the grades are increasing even more. So the overall height at this point is about 36 feet high. And then the depth of the entire system is about 45 feet, 10 inches. So you're really getting farther and farther back into the site. When you look at the sections here, you can see those planting beds and the relationship to a person and to a car. Again, this is cutting through the building right here where the planting bed would be at its deepest. You can see that right there. And then what it looks like in elevation. We did price out the straight wall option, the batter wall option, and the terrace wall option. And after reviewing those costs with the committee decided to proceed with the batter wall option, as this option added substantial cost to the project. The floor plans have not really changed since we last showed you. For those people who aren't familiar with the project, again, the main entrance to the building is right here through the vestibule in the lobby. There's a training and EOC room, which would also be made available to the public. Public toilets located there. Those are the public zones of the building. Beyond there, there's the fire department administration spaces on the first floor, the fire department operation spaces, the apparatus bays and all the apparatus support spaces located off of them. There's the hose and training tower located right here off of the apparatus bays. And then up on the upper floor are the living quarters for the fire department. The elevations have been developed a little bit since we last spoke to you. Mainly, we've been looking at the tower quite a bit and options for that. This is the most recent configuration that we've been presenting to the committee. They voted to include a clock in the upper portion of the tower here, and then a Maltese cross, which is a symbol of a fire department, also located on the tower. We've incorporated an arch element to tie together some of the arches that we have in other portions of the building, some windows to allow natural light and to also allow the tower to glow a little bit and be a beacon for the fire station. The rest of the facade has not changed much since we last saw you. We have been working with masonry reps to come up with some options for the masonry. We've had a number of meetings with them to look at different products, and we haven't found the right product just yet to present to the committee, but that is in process. We're hoping to wrap that up soon so that we can present material options to the committee, to the building committee, and then bring their selections to you. I know there was one comment that we saw from the design review committee about the tower roof, and I just wanted to clarify that because the tower is rectangular in shape, the roof is actually a hip roof and it joins at a ridge right here. We don't have a flat roof over the tower, but it is actually a hip roof because of the geometry of the tower itself. It doesn't meet at a point, but rather at a ridge line because of its rectangular footprint. When we last met with the design review committee, there was a comment about the roof decks off the day room and off the fitness room and whether they would be really utilized by the fire department because of the southern exposure and they might be too sunny and all. We did take that into consideration, and we are showing some screening trellises or pergolas rather over the roof decks to provide some shade for the firefighters out on those decks. These are the updated views from the street looking from the northwest and from the northeast. You can see that site sign that has been incorporated into the design, which I will show in just a moment. And then these are from the parking lot area, and you can see those pergolas over the roof decks. We do need to get some zoning relief for a couple of things. The front yard setback is 20 feet is required. Our forward-most wall plane is 39 feet, so we'll be looking for zoning relief for that. We're also going to be looking for some zoning relief for the signs. The signs are limited to 32 square feet. We have this freestanding site sign, which will have an LED message board, as well as the address and Northborough Fire Department up above it. The sign support base was designed to be sympathetic to the building architecture. It's a masonry base, and then we plan on incorporating some of the banding and some of the alternate masonry materials that you see on the building. We have 2 piers on either side supporting the sign up above, and then a recessed base underneath that supporting the LED sign in between. We also have a sign on the building that reads Northborough Fire Department. These are metal letters that will be mounted to the masonry. We're still looking at fonts and at fabrication for the signs. So the exact width of each of the letters might vary a little bit from what we're showing here. So we'll be asking for relief for a 2-foot height and then a 72-foot 8-inch maximum width. And that width was determined as the distance between the edge of this pier and the pier over on this side of the building. So we have that width to work with as we look at the fabrication of the letters and the fonts. And that is the end of the presentation that we have.
Okay, thank you very much. I do want to point out, I don't know if other members caught it, that the process is a little backwards than what we usually do. Usually applicants, which is the Fire Station Building Committee, would come to the Design Review Committee for input and then make votes, make their recommendations. So what the Fire Station Building Committee is actually doing is meeting before our meetings, and they're taking their votes. So that they're taking them in advance prior to our meetings. But I also want to thank the Design Review Committee for their time, because we've put a lot of time into this. So it would be good to know in advance that you're going to be voting and we're not going to be able to really discuss. But as a committee, we are the purview for sending the recommendations to this planning board and the ZBA. So as a design review committee, I think we should continue on with our recommendations and continue reviewing, even though the Fire Station Building Committee decided to vote last night on certain things that were supposed to be in front of us. But I just want to thank everybody, because we do put a lot of time and effort into it too. And but to start, Lori, do you want to start with your review memo? Since the last time the questions that were answered, I think she went through a lot of them during her presentation, questions from last time. Do you have anything else outstanding or anything you want to talk to?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the responses, I provided this letter to the design team in advance, so I appreciate you addressing many of the questions that I had in your presentation. So I think for the most part, you've addressed almost everything. One of the comments that I made is it seems like the photometric plan was based on the prior site layout. So that will have to be updated to reflect this new site layout, parking lot layout.
I'm sorry, can I just answer that?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I think that it's actually the civil drawing needs to get caught up to the lighting plan, but we will definitely coordinate that and get that corrected.
Okay. Let's
Do you mind
see.
actually stopping sharing your screen and I'll pull up the memo?
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course, the site plan that is submitted to the planning board needs to depict the underground utilities. So if you could add that. Let's see if there's anything else. What is your planned approach having to do with the street trees? Are you planning on asking for a waiver from the 17 street trees? Or are you gonna be able to accommodate some additional trees in your design?
Ray, can you address that?
I sort of can and sort of can't, because we need the sight lines for the trucks. which we put in as many as we can to keep the sight lines clear and also, cars entering the parking lot. If we can double them up, but we'd have to work with, with HKT on how to approach adding additional trees without blocking views. Does that make sense?
As a compromise position, it did look to me like there were a couple of locations on the site itself, like maybe behind the building, over by where the parking is, where you may be able to accommodate some additional trees.
Yeah, we can add more trees. It's just the street, the street tree definition.
So in your waiver request letter, you could point out that in exchange for having fewer street trees than the requirements state, you are providing those trees in alternative locations. They might like that.
I'm sorry.
But
I just wanted to see how many we have in excess of 17 trees on our plant list right now.
yes, but you are also required to plant trees associated with the parking lot. So you kind of have the minimal number of trees.
Mhm.
So there would be opportunities when I looked at your site design to possibly include additional trees instead of just the minimal, because like I said, there's a requirement for street trees and then there's a requirement for parking lot trees. So if you could go above and beyond, then they may be more willing to grant the waivers. Is my
Okay. We'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Of course, adding the ADA compliant ramp. So it looks to me like you are going to be removing the existing sidewalk on Route 20, and you're going to be shifting the location of the sidewalk and building new. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We wanted to provide that landscape buffer, the grassed area between the right of way and the walkway.
Yeah, okay, that's great, because also the sidewalk is broken in places, so I'm happy to see that you're doing that. Just make sure that you add the ADA compliant ramps and the detectable warning plates where your driveway locations are.
Yep.
If you're doing that, are they going to reconnect the sidewalks to the existing sidewalks, or are they going to be floating in the middle of nowhere?
We'll be connecting them back in. That's how it's shown on our plans right now. We'll connect. I know that was one of your other comments, Lori. We're showing connection to the Hillside Grill walkway now. And we will be connecting into the adjacent bank walkway as well.
Okay, that's great.
Excuse me, can I stop a second on that? The adjacent Hillside Grill goes up and back. It's not along the street.
Correct. Yep.
So how will you connect to that?
So our walkway is also back away from the street to provide that landscape buffer. So we're pretty well aligned. We will need to adjust it won't be a straight line connection from our sidewalk to their sidewalk. And we'll be able to grade to connect into their grade on their site. We've already reviewed that.
Is that somewhere we can see?
Can I ask one comment? Nicole, you did insert a new civil plan, correct? And that is in our presentation from today. So if you let Amy
Sure.
reshare, she updated that plan. Nicole updated that plan. If that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. That does show to Lori the accessible ramps and detectable warning panels that we've already added based on your comment there.
Great.
So how are you, I mean, theirs is it's much higher. So how does it get connected so that somebody can be AD compliant and go up to theirs and then come down to their driveway?
Yep, so we have landscape area on either side between the right of way and where we're connecting in. And also the grades on our side of the site where we're connecting in is landscape. So we'll be able to grade to their same grade, and then along that stretch of walk, along that distance, we can grade up to 5% max to still be ADA compliant.
But you don't have like, you don't have an elevation showing us that, you just have this piece, is that correct? It's hard, you know, the difficulty is that sidewalk has always been a problem because nobody seemed to ask the questions, I guess, of why it wasn't on street level and why it wasn't connected to the next piece of property. So it would be better to understand how it's actually going to look, not just from the bird's eye view, but from the street view.
Yeah,
Right
so
now, it's a pretty high rise. It goes back to their building. It seems it's that building in that location is a little disjointed from the rest of the road. So, and you're saying 5%, I believe you said 5% was acceptable. Visually, 5% is hard to understand what it is. And when you have people that are walking with a walker or with a, you know, wheelchair, you know, is it, I can't, in my head, I can't visualize how it's going to look. So I'd like to be able to see that in an elevation. And when we keep changing the line from the road and people are walking, because we have a few properties like that where it gets closer to the building and a larger green space, which is great for protection from the road, but many people end up walking in the breakdown lane because they're not comfortable going up to the buildings close. We have that especially on 130 Main Street. So Hillside Grill was never a sidewalk that was utilized by any pedestrian. As a matter of fact, it's hard to get to, hard to get off of, and it's pretty high up. So I guess I would like to see how that is in an elevation if possible. And then I'll let you go on.
okay, yeah, Amy, I don't know if it's helpful just while we're talking here to be able to trace kind of what that connection looks like from starting at that bank property to the east and just how our sidewalk kind of comes into the site a bit. It's not closer to the building than it is to the street there. It is providing a little landscape island. Yeah, thank you with your hand there. And then we have our crosswalk across the site. And generally on our site, this will still be relatively close to the elevation of the roadway. And then as you continue along, the existing grades are pretty similar in this area. And then once you get to this point here, that's where we'll start grading up. And then where we show our walk ending right now is where that Hillside Grill walk begins. So we'll be providing that connection now to the Hillside Grill.
And it will be a smooth connection to one to the other.
Correct. Yep. It'll meet ADA requirements.
All right. And okay, I have another question on the wall, but that's a wall question. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Lori, did that answer your question?
Yes, I'm all set.
Okay. I just had a question because I know that the design team is going to go for variances tomorrow. They're gonna send out an application, or I had sent Bob an email last night. I know it was late. I just had a question. I guess they don't have to go for the height variance because Bob, you had mentioned that it was an uninhabitable area. And I just wanted to see how that applied. Just because I don't want them to have not applied for something, it might be better to apply and then pass over it when you get to ZBA than to get to ZBA and realize we should have added that to the list.
The tower does not meet the definition of habitable space, according to the definitions listed in Chapter 780 CMR, the state building code. And that's directly where the definition came from.
So
The zoning code in town does not have a definition of habitable space. So therefore it is not up to opinion. So I went to the next best I could find, which is in the building code. And that's where I got the interpretation.
So in our zoning bylaws, it said that they measure, it talks about how we measure the height. So this
But nothing to
height,
do with habitable space, though.
Right.
What are you talking about, habitable space, or are you talking about height?
right, well, I think the ZBA would have to go, I mean, they'd have to go for a variance for the height.
No,
if
they
they're
don't.
45 feet. So this is 42 feet, the stairs?
There is no variance required for the height of that structure because it is not classified as habitable space. The zoning code talks about habitable space without definition. I went to the building code for the definition, and they distinctly said that they gave specific examples of what is and is not habitable space, and that does not qualify as habitable space. Therefore, a variance is not required.
Okay. So this is like off the record, but not off the record, but it doesn't have to do with this building. So I guess I can ask you offline. I was going to ask you if attics don't count as habitable space, then they only measure up to an attic.
I'll answer that offline.
Okay.
It's not germane to this conversation.
Yep. All right. I just wanted to make sure they've had all the right things for the ZBA. Also, another thing just to note is they're going for a variance for an electronic sign. Currently, we don't allow electronic signs in the downtown. And I did ask town council last week if you could go for a use variance for a sign. Like, I know you can go for the dimensional use variance, but he said if you were going to try to go for an electronic sign, the criteria for a variance is on site, soil, topography. And he said that would be a hard reach to try to get a use variance for a sign. I just wanted to let you know that, but there are a lot of great signs out there anyways that I've seen at other fire stations if it didn't work out for you. But I just wanted to mention that.
Can I jump in on that, Amy?
Sure.
At the select board meeting, we discussed and put in place municipal sign conformity. So they're all looking the same, they're all built the same. And this would apply to the fire station as well. So I would recommend that we hold off on that sign. I think we'll have some offerings shortly for what the signs municipally should look like. And unless we want every sign in town looking like this one, I think it's only fair to make sure that they're all going to be the same kind of sign for all the different buildings, such as police, fire, town hall, and that sort of thing. So I would say that what was submitted today would be on hold.
Amy, if I may.
Sure.
So the intent of the sign was for town use, not necessarily for fire department use. Right now, we wheel around a mobile sign when we have things that are coming on, and I know such as town meeting coming up or what that. So this will give the town the ability to put out messaging to all the people. And if there is an emergency, we can use it for that as well. So that was the intent of the electronic sign when it was originally proposed with the original feasibility. So I just want to make sure that's understood. That's the purpose of it.
Okay, thanks. While this picture is up.
Can I
you're not
ask
shooting.
one
Sure.
question? Lori, you've directed us to go after the variance. So if we don't, so are you telling us not to go after this variance now? We're going after it for size, not so much for what it looks like. It's really a dimensional thing right now. The design is intended to match the building. So are we talking about not going after it completely now, pulling that sign and being down just to the building sign now? Is that my direction here?
It's news to me about the selectmen directing the signs for all municipal buildings. I hadn't heard about that. So
I mean, we can always put it in for ZBA and then, pull it back, I guess. I mean, if that's true, Bob, Federico, is that true that we could request it? And if it is turned down, then, or the thing, we can change the design, but the size still would be the same. I'm unsure what to do here from my point of view.
In terms of the monument sign, I'm going to re-review what I wrote. regarding the size of the sign needing a variance.
Okay,
In terms of, I have to go back to the definitions and read it again. So, if time is of the essence, I would apply for the variance and then, withdraw that section.
when we get to
Yeah,
the meet
but-
CBA, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna redesign that. I sent out a message yesterday. I had a couple of people call me back and they said, "You sure about that?" And so I agreed that I would look at it again. I will do
Okay.
that today after we get off of this meeting.
Okay,
So I would say probably, I'll reinvestigate that and get some word out for that today.
okay.
All right.
And
Is
I
that
did-
a question?
I just want to say that we had the meeting on Monday night, so this is 4 days later. And it was discussed in part of the downtown revitalization plan and the desire to have things start to be conforming and looking alike. So it's not, sorry to bring it up now, it just was, as I say, it was just discussed. And I think that we agreed to it and at the board, and then we're giving it to design review to put together a couple of options to make the decision on for what municipal signs will look like.
The only question I have with that, Lisa, is Mitch didn't mention a thing last night during our meeting about changing the sign. He actually said it was fine, so I'm just confused with that.
Well, he doesn't have the authority on his own to say it's fine. I mean, it has to,
Wow.
before the board discussed it, was told to go to design review to get the information. And I think that unless we're gonna make all the signs look like that, I think we have to make some attempts to try to make conformity of what is in town for looking the same. So.
Okay, so I'm going to, I mean, if I'm hearing this correct, then Laura, you can talk to me offline about this later. I am going to include in my application the sign. We can pull the sign before at the zoning meeting and say, don't review this. If I'm understanding that correctly, and if we want to make this zoning meeting, and so I'll just have the front setback, the wall sign, and then street sign, and then we can pull that. Does that make sense to people?
It
I've
does.
got one-
We've got a few weeks before the public hearing starts. So the ZBA public hearing is March 26th, so
Mhm.
maybe there would be some further guidance from the select board by then.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, also, if I may, in terms of setbacks for the signs, there are none.
Oh, no, I meant setback for the building.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
just
okay.
naming we're going after 3, the setback for the building being 1,
Okay.
the wall sign being 2, and these
Yep.
monument sign being the
Okay.
third
No,
one.
I was confused. I
Yeah.
thought we were worried about the monument sign.
No, 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 no.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I was gonna open it up to board comment. If Lori, if you're all set with everything on your list, I know there was a continued list that were board questions, so I will open it up to board comments. And I didn't know if, who wants to start, if anyone has any comments.
Talk.
I can if you want. It's up to everybody else.
What's the snow plan? We discussed that and that hasn't been addressed yet.
Amy, do you mind sharing?
Yeah, let me share my screen, and then maybe Nicole, you could talk a little bit about what's showing on your plans.
Sure. Yep, so we've identified a couple locations for potential snow storage, and that includes a couple of open landscape areas in front of the wall. We've also added a 3-foot strip mainly for light to provide that separation from the wall, and also for vegetation in front of the wall, but also potentially for some snow storage as well, and that's around the entire site. Also, I think the biggest addition in terms of possible snow storage is the relocation of the parking spaces from the eastern side of the site to the back of the site. That allows us to utilize that area to grade and also to provide snow storage area.
What's your depth of that area and size, length and width?
Of the area in the east?
Yeah, of your areas that you're talking.
So they vary across the site. The one at the east is about, let's see here. Sorry, just referring to the plan I have on my page. To scale here, it's about 20 feet deep for the eastern area. But
By
they
how
do
wide?
vary across the
By
site.
length?
The length is, right now what's being shown is about 85 feet.
Okay.
And that's
then
the
where
largest
else?
area we're showing.
And what are your other sizes?
The other sizes are, let's see here, about 20 feet. And it's kind of a circle there in the back corner of the site, the southwest.
No.
And I would say something similar to the front without getting in specifics right now.
We
Well,
should
if I-
also add that I know that Chief Parenti has been talking to the DPW about how they handle snow. And Chief Parenti, I don't know if you want to talk about what your discussions have been with them.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I spoke at length with Scott Charpentier, and he recommended using to move a gate. So that small pathway that we created between to center a gate there, and we could use that whole area for snow storage. And if we needed it, DPW could be over there with a loader and have the area cleared out in 15 minutes, not an issue. And if like where we are right now, when snow backs up, they come over and clean it out for us. So that would be the same process. He sees, when I asked him about this arrangement, he thought that there was sufficient room for snow storage and with our ability to remove it.
All right, so you're on board with Scott and he's fine.
Yep.
Yep, that's all I needed to know.
Can I ask a question about the wall and snow? With the wall being 30 feet high and the chances of sun reaching the pavement, how is that going to react to melting, even if you remove some of the higher piles? And well, pretty much the melting question, because that's why you have snow piles. And then because the wall is there, isn't it more difficult? I mean, your equipment coming in is going to have to go maybe with a bucket truck back out with the snow in the bucket truck, because you've got a wall on, a major wall on one side all the way around. So it's not like the station you have now where it's pretty much, there's no wall around it.
I can only speak to what Mr. Charpentier said, and he said that the way we have it laid out now, he was very comfortable with his crews being able to come in and to clear the area.
Okay.
What do you think, Dave? Like, do you see the wall as an issue back there with the snow removal with the sun, or from your
I mean,
opinion?
as long as there's sufficient drainage there, he'll be fine. If it does back up, he can come in with the loaders and truck it right out. But long as Scott's on board, he knows what to do and he can get it out of there. That's fine. You just have to move the cars, truck it right out of there and move it over to the barn and let it melt over there. That's what I would do.
Okay. While this drawing was up, I had a question. The transformer is on the west side of the building. Have there been any thought to put it on the back with the generator? It looks like the electrical room on the building is in the back. So they're all run into the building under the same utilities, or is there a reason why the transformer is over on that side of the building?
We had a lot of conversations with the electrical engineer and with PAR as well about the best locations for these. The closer you get a transformer to the street, it's actually less cost, because the most expensive run is the primary run from the street into the transformer. So if you move the transformer back into the site, you're really increasing the cost for that primary run. The other issue is that putting the transformer and the generator near one another, there are certain distances that are dictated for safety reasons, and without impacting any of the parking spaces here, we'd likely have to put a blast wall between the two of them in order to meet the requirements. That has to be a rated wall, and that would also increase cost and is not ideal. So this was the best location for the operations of the building and for taking cost into consideration.
Okay. And it won't really be seen from the street either. It's pretty far back and it's kind of behind the training room.
It's partially obscured, and with the landscaping, it will be obscured as well.
Mhm. I was wondering, do the charging stations, I know last night it was discussed, there are going to be 6 to 11 car charging stations. I know like when I see them over at Walmart, they have these big electrical units. Are they different now, like in parking lots where it's just, I guess Wegmans doesn't have those, just Walmart. So it's kind of like not a big system for the car chargers. I'm just wondering what they look like.
I mean, they're fairly utilitarian looking, I guess is what you're suggesting, probably. I don't have a cut sheet with us to show you what they look like, but
What
Yeah.
Amy's referring to is at Walmart, there's a large area with a bunch of transformers and capacitors and all that. Bob has his hand, I think he can address it.
Yeah, if I may, Amy, Walmart was one of the first ones in the area to put these charging stations in. And of all the charging stations I've seen, both in Northborough and around the area, excuse me, that Walmart is the only place that has that type of electronic backup, which leads me to believe they probably didn't have sufficient electronics on the site to do it without those transformers. And, you know, that was, I want to say 6 years ago. So the technology has definitely changed, you know, lighter, smaller, more efficient type thing. So I don't foresee the need for any of that sort of big fenced in area.
Okay.
Like I said, it's, you know, between the change in technology over time, and, you know, if you look at all the other installations that have gone in that don't have that big conglomerate of boxes, leads me to believe that Walmart probably didn't have either the correct type of power or correctly conditioned power or enough power on its main lines. They had to put those capacitors in.
Okay. I don't have an electronic car, so I didn't know
Yeah.
which ones had to do that and which ones didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question too. Well, this is up. There's a zigzag line in the back, which is the limit of clearing. Was there a reason why that line was picked? And I'm only thinking because we're talking the wall, and I was wondering about, you know, a slope versus a wall, and was that looked into?
Yep, so that limit of clearing is set based on our grading that we looked at with the straight wall option. So that limit will be updated as required for what we need to swale water around the wall with the updated wall option. So that's what dictates that wall line, or that limit of clearing line, is the grading that's required to make the wall happen. That does include sloping behind the wall and sloping away from the wall to create a swale to direct water around the wall. So in terms of, I think what you were referring to is just straight sloping. You would have to really chase the slope up the hill, and there's already steep slopes up the hill. And you don't have the space within the limits that we're showing to be able to just slope down without that wall. That 30-foot difference is a large difference when it comes to just sloping down.
Okay, can I just share my screen for a minute? Okay. So, one thing I was doing when I was thinking about the wall, and I'm not the engineer, and I do appreciate your description, but there are some places in our town that have super steep slopes, and you're saying there's just not the room to slope it. Like, this is a pretty steep slope. And I guess my idea coming today, I was going to ask if there was a way to utilize natural or stabilized slope grades versus the wall. And one thing I also wanted to discuss was, you know, raising the administration building and west parking lot elevation as much as possible, because the higher up it goes, the lower the wall goes. But you're saying it can't be done.
Nicole, can you talk about the grading
Yeah.
challenges?
Here's two doors down. This building is 2 doors down. And they went up in elevation and then they have a riprap slope back there.
Amy,
Sure.
if I may. 89 West Main Street, I recommend you not use that as an example because that back banking was incorrectly installed.
Mhm.
Is one of the failures in the site plan review or the site review that they currently are required to fix. So I would just caution about using that as an example because it's not, it has not been installed according to the approved plans.
Right. Will they have to put a wall in? I'm just wondering. I don't like the riprap, but
Mhm.
there are a lot of other slopes in town that are pretty steep. And I was
Right.
wondering if it was something that could be done
Yeah,
behind the
so
fire station.
So the steep slope that I was referring to that we reviewed and how you'd have to chase that back, 3-to-1 is typically what we use for just a grass slope before you get into that need for riprap. 2-to-1 would be with riprap. I think there's a couple of things to note here in terms of how we've reviewed this grading. One of which is the fact that the finished floor of the building is the finished floor all around. So that goes to the back of the apron as well. So vehicles can back in at the back of the building. So that sets that 302 elevation, which is close to the roadway elevation around that portion of the building. I know HKT spoke to why the finished floor is the same across the whole site. You would need an elevator if it was at a different elevation, and that also plays into, I think, just the use of the building. But in terms of grading, that's what partially set it. Also, if we're going to slope a hill, we need to make sure that we have separation and the ability to swale. We don't want to just direct a slope directly to the area that they're going to be using for vehicles, especially for an emergency operations like this building. So that's a couple of reasons why we can't slope back in terms of the space. And you just end up chasing the slope back because of the steep slope that already exists.
I just didn't know if it stopped because of the limit of grading. There's a line limit of grading. So I didn't know if they had stopped it for a reason. And that's why we couldn't do the slope. But if the limit of grading moved, then maybe you could do the slope. And I did imagine like a small wall at the bottom to catch the swale in the water and divert it off. But I just know the wall is, I have some pictures. Because this is up also. This is a 12 to 14 foot wall behind Sierra up at Northborough Crossing. And this is 30 feet. If anyone wants to get an idea of a 30-foot wall, it's on the corner of Route 9. It's also in Northborough Crossing, but it's Route 9. I didn't take a picture of myself there, but that's probably how tall I would be because I counted up 8 blocks. But it's a pretty big wall. And thinking about the wall, you can see the fencing up here. If they do go forward with the wall, I would hope there would be fencing that I was thinking it should be higher than 42 inches. Like pool fences have to be at least 4 feet. This fence right here at Northborough Crossing was taller than me. I don't know how tall it was, but I'm about 5'4", and it was higher than I was. And they have this safety feature to block people from walking on the wall unless you're going to put the fence right on top of the wall. I'm sure you're not, though. That would be tricky, right?
We are showing fencing at the top of the wall for safety. And we'll look at the detail of how that gets set with the wall itself, with the construction, but we haven't designed that detail just yet.
So you are going to set it right on top of the wall?
No,
But
I'm
not
saying
back-
I'm saying we have to look at the detail of construction about how the wall is built and how that fencing is set. We haven't drawn that detail just yet to figure it out.
Okay. It'd be great if it's actually not set on the wall to have some safety features.
Can I ask a question more about the wall again? Your connection between Hillside Grill and your property, there's a huge drop off on the hillside side. how are you going to connect the walls? Is it going to be a little grassy area that's 10 feet between them, or are they going to be, what's going to happen with that connection?
Yep.
With the, with the landscape, Nicole, do you want to talk a little bit about the clearing that needs to happen there? And
Yeah, yep. So we will need to meet the grades that exist at the property line. And so that means matching the grades at that property. So where those grades are in that landscape island, there will be landscape between the two walls that will exist on the fire station site and on the Hillside Grill side.
So, and how wide is that?
Let's see, I can get a dimension for you here. It's approximately 30 feet between the two faces of the walls.
The two faces, and is there any problem with the hillside wall collapsing or not being built with the expectation on the other? They didn't build it knowing that wall and an area would be taken away on the other side. Is their wall, Bob would probably know this maybe, is their wall now going to be strong enough to hold that just 30-foot stance with the water that does come off the hill? And there's only so much land that can absorb it. I realize you probably have, I hope, have some sort of a piping into the ground for the excess water from the hill that you're now carving into. But it's, I think the adjacent project is very important because that's already cut into that hill quite a bit. And now you're coming around with a further cut. So it's just a historically wet area. And I think you're taking away as much natural defense as was there before.
Yeah, so the new wall will reduce the pressure on that existing wall at Hillside Grill by cutting the fill out on the fire station side will reduce the loading. So it won't increase any loads on the wall, and the stormwater on the top area we will accommodate.
Is Swales going to move the water to where you want it to go underground, or is it going to be on top?
We will also have drainage behind our wall that will drain, underneath the wall.
But underneath, being into the ground underneath the building to come out in another area, or is it just going to settle on its own?
Yeah, it will be collected and removed from the area. It won't be left.
Okay. And do you have a drawing of what this is going to look like?
We have the grading on the top. Yeah.
if I can share my screen again.
And do you have this in an elevation?
So this is the plan of the drainage.
Yeah, so we're showing a swale running down towards West Main Street with catch basins along the way to collect storm.
So it's going to come all the way around and out? Like there's piping that will take it to that point, and it'll
Yes.
then collect out onto West Main Street, or will it go into catch basins?
It'll go into catch basins and then into the underground detention systems we're proposing.
Okay.
So
But
there's an underground detention system here, and you can see the drainage line going underground into the system. And there-
yeah, it's pretty intense.
Well,
But
we have it up with their, sorry. I was just wondering if there'll be apparatus bay floor drains into it too. Are there gonna be any floor drains?
There will be floor drains. The floor drains go into an oil water separator. And then Nicole and Jim, you want to talk about where it goes from there?
These inside the building?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they would go into an oil separator and then into the storm, not into the storm, into the sewer system.
Okay. Lori, this is just for the planning board. Will there be a town engineer that also reviews it? Like Fred was the one who would review all of the retention basins and
Yeah,
stormwater.
so I am gonna finalize that with Scott. As you know, we lost the assistant DPW director, so that position is now open. So Fred has stepped in to do some additional consulting. Ideally, I would love Fred to do the review. And then, of course, this will trigger land disturbance permit with the Conservation Commission. So Vinnie Vignali is also an engineer, and he will be doing the review of the stormwater system.
Okay, that's great. Now, yeah, now that Fred's gone, it makes it tricky. Okay, Lisa, did you have any more questions on that, or anybody else on the board have any questions on that?
I'm going to wait for some more questions at the end. I think I interrupted Dave with his landscaping questions. Sorry, Dave.
I was just going one at a time. So go ahead.
Are you done, or you want to talk more about what?
I was just on snow and just minor things as I keep going. You can keep going. Go ahead, shoot.
Actually,
So-
I have one question. Sorry. It's not landscaping. It has to do with this, the basins and the water. As a resident, I toured the Southborough station, and in their training tower, they talked about a specialty drain for the water to flow out. I'm pretty sure. I was wondering, and the chief might know this, is Northborough planning on having a special drain in the host tower area?
What do you mean by special drain, Amy? I'm
I guess
sorry.
I'd have to talk to the Southborough captain. He talked about, I think they had a special system put into their host tower. And it was a specialty drain. So maybe it's something you want to ask to him. I don't know enough about
There
fire training.
I'm sure it's just a drain to handle any water coming off of the hose that would go into the oil water separator, the same, because it's tied right off the bay. There's no other reason for a special drain in that area. There's not that much water in there.
I don't know. I want to think it was something that they caught, that someone pointed out that they needed to have.
I think that's more of a building design issue.
Yeah, I don't think that has any, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there because he was glad that it was caught before they built their building. So it's just an FYI, you might want to ask him what it was, or I could ask him.
No, there's no need for that because he's a captain and he wouldn't have been involved in it, but I will speak with the deputy chief here who used to be over there and knows all that. I'll check with him.
Yep.
Amy, I think when we took the tour, the host tower, they actually had an attachment to be able to put the hose on to bring out the water in its usual speed.
Right. It
Don't
had
have
to
the
do
right
with speed.
lingo. And so they show that in the tower, when they were utilizing it for training purposes, that the water that would come down from the tower would have some place to go. And I think that's what you're talking about. So
Okay,
it wasn't actually activity that was being utilized inside the tower.
Yeah, we'll address all that during the actual construction or when we start talking about that, but I don't know if that's a design issue.
Well, it had to do with the water in the drain, so I just wanted to bring it up. Okay.
So then I guess if we're still going to stay on landscape, then again, elevations are part of what's required for the design review to understand better and for anybody who's going to be looking at this. And I know you're going to be bringing this forward to town meeting, and I think that that's going to be one of the important features is to let the voters know what it is they're actually going to be seeing once it's built. And just showing these kind of plans does not help the layperson to understand what it's really going to look like. So I think it's really important that we do as much as we can to help the station's efforts and everybody go through so that people aren't either voting blindly or for the negative or the positive. They should see what things look like. So I'd like more elevations than we've seen in the past, but certainly the connection between Hillside Grill and this property is very important. And I think that we need to show both the elevation of how that sidewalk's going to be attached, how the sidewall is going to be attached, and if you're going to have landscaping and such on the top of that. And I'm assuming that you're going to have a fence already on that side as well. So to be able to picture that would be great.
I'll add in just like some nice section elevations, some nice front, not just the little thin things with the walls, but just some nice visuals, just to kind of show what this is going to look like. Would be nice, not the whole thing, but just section elevations, some nice shots, and be nice to see what this looks like. Unfortunately, I'm just getting Wi-Fi for the first time, so I'm seeing a lot of the landscape end for the first time, 35 minutes ago, so I really can't comment on the landscaping too much because I saw it for all of about 3 minutes or 2 minutes if it's up on the screen. So I went through to look at it, but I think that would definitely help as far as seeing it. But for myself, I need to take a better look at it. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Thanks. Lori, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, you can see on this drawing that the retaining wall for the Hillside Grill does not abut the property line. So there's just going to be, a wooded elevation. So of course they're going to be grading, as shown on this plan, up to the property line. But on the Hillside Grill side, there is, forested area. So it's just going to be woods on their side in between the retaining wall and the property line.
The woods only come up to the top. There's grassy area from the side of the building. From the street side, as it comes up, there's a good amount of grass between the building and the
right.
high
So that's just going to be landscaped area, I guess is my point. So you're going to see that the walls are never going to meet. There's going to be landscaped area in between the walls, and it looks like maybe you can point out how what the distance is between this retaining wall and the property line. I can't see on this plan.
Nicole, can you help me with distances here? So as Lori says, there's a masonry retaining wall on the Hillside Grill property right here, and then there's a stretch where there's no retaining wall, and then the concrete block retaining wall continues back here. But there is a distance from their wall to the property line, and then from the property line to the fire station wall. And Nicole, I don't know if you know what those distances are.
Yeah, so from the face of their wall, so kind of where they're at where their driveway portion is there, that's 16 feet to our property line. To the approximate top of the wall here, where we get to about, it looks like 10 feet from the property line, where those grades are right at the back of those extreme grades to the property line is about 10 feet.
And then could you also explain what the distance is from the fire station property line to the retaining wall on the fire station property? What's that distance?
Yep, so to the face of the wall to the property line, it's about 25 feet.
Okay. So there's going to be about 35 feet of landscaped area in between the two walls at the narrowest point.
So that again would be, as an elevation, would be much easier to understand than just this one tile. So I'm just making that recommendation. I think it's going to be very important that people get to understand what they're looking at. But that's your choice.
Okay, I had a question about the pergolas on the back. Is there one or two? Because I noticed there are 2 roof terraces. Is there one?
There are 2.
Okay. All right. Going back to our Southborough tour, they just had a picnic table with an umbrella, and that might be a thing when we're not talking cost, but in the future. I know with prevailing wages, the pergola area on the town common, which is pretty big, but it was $90,000. So it might be something when they're looking at costs, they might want to take into account. Also, when you're on that roof terrace, is there a wall when you overlook the parking lot? Like, is there a safety rail, or the wall is like, comes up to your waist or chest?
Yes, so the parapets would be built to the height required for them to be guardrails. So there would be a 42-inch high guardrail combination of the parapet and any railing that we'd need to make up that. So it would be 42 feet or 42 inches, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Can I just share screen for a minute? Okay. I don't have my share screen link. It went away.
You're still
Okay.
identified as co-host, so it should work.
All right. Let's see. Okay, I just wanted to share this about the roof monitors. When we did go to Southborough, they have no skylights, no roof monitors. They have the LED lighting, and it was super light in there. So a concern I had with the roof monitors is there are 3 15 by 98 feet roof monitors, and they cut into the roof membrane, which is insulation, and I'm concerned with the amount of buildings that we have leaking as it is right now, that in the fire station, we don't want to add any more maintenance, any more costs. They use the overhead doors with the plenty of light fixtures. And I know a concern was that the guys might hit the doors on the way out. They had this red and green light system that when a call comes in, the doors start opening, the guys put on their stuff, the light turns green before they pull out, so they're not hitting the doors. But this is just something I wanted to throw out there because there is a concern with the maintenance and the cost and energy costs too when you're cutting into the insulation of the roof. And this is a northern facing building. So, I mean, the roof monitors, I don't know, they help during the day, but I guess when the fire station committee goes back and look at them, is it worth the risk of the leaking? And also, are they needed with the lighting? It was just something that really stood out when we walked through. I looked up to see what system they had because it was super bright in there, and they had no skylights and no roof monitors.
Mm-hmm. I have not been to Southborough. I can't speak to that project design, but I just want to clarify that we're not cutting into the roof insulation. These aren't skylights that would interrupt the roof plane. They're actually roof monitors, which is a little bit different. The glazing is on a vertical plane like a wall, and so the roof membrane would meet the monitor, and then there is any vertical surfaces of the monitors are built like walls. So there's insulation in those, just like there would be in any wall in the building. And then the sloped portion of the roof monitor is built like a roof. So again, there's insulation in that, just like any roof portion of the building. And then the vertical glazing part is just like any window of the building and is built to meet energy code requirements for fenestration. So it doesn't affect the overall performance or insulation plane of the building at all. Everything in this building has to be built to meet the energy code. And we're not cutting back on insulation in order to put an opening in there. for light. I do think, again, I don't know Southborough. I haven't been to Southborough. I can't speak to that, but I do know that we've done these roof monitors in other buildings. We put them in Ashland, and they really helped to bring the light deep into the building. You might get some light from the doors at the perimeter, but you don't get the same light levels deep into the building. And so those roof monitors definitely help with that. And I think we're trying to build a building that is a healthy building for the fire department personnel as well. And we all know that access to light and views helps with occupant health, and the roof monitors contribute to that.
Is there flashing around them? Are they cut into the roof? Like,
Oh, there
Yep.
definitely is flashing. Absolutely.
yep.
That's
I
where,
just felt that the Southborough looked, that was deep. I had to keep compare how deep Southborough was to Northborough, but it was plenty light.
Yeah. Again, I haven't been to Southborough. It's not one of our projects. I don't know the plan. I don't know the orientation. I don't know any of that to
Sure.
speak to it.
Sure, thank you.
the one thing,
Bob?
the one thing I have to say about any flashing is that's where so much of your leaks happen. So hopefully the contractor does a really good job and the flashing is done correctly, but we've had so many leak problems in these buildings, and I know people that have had them. Anytime there's that connection, you in years later will have water issues. So
Right. I think
Yeah.
the less cuts in the roof, the better.
Well, construction
Oh.
oversight is really important, which is why you have an owner's project manager on the team. The design team oversees construction. We visit the site, and we observe to make sure that the contract documents are being followed. And then the owner's project manager has someone on site full time to do the same. At the end of construction, the roof manufacturer is typically required to do a walk of the roof to make sure that the installation meets all of their requirements before they issue a roof warranty. So there's a lot of oversight on a public construction site when it comes to envelope construction issues.
Hmm. But I guess it would be important how long the warranty is for. Also, you know, we get shingles or anything else, you get a warranty of 30 years, they last 20. But then it's a, you know, limited warranty. So it's not like someone comes out and helps you and puts in a whole new roof. And the town right now is looking at 3 new roofs. So I just wanted to be cognizant of it.
Amy, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. Just talk about any kind of lighting or skylights or monitors or whatever. That is going to come under the building code requirements, depending upon the size of the apparatus bay, the usage, how much light, how much natural light. They may be required under the building code. Keep in mind that the new energy code is going to be coming out, and it's going to get a whole lot more difficult. So we have to be cognizant of that. So whether or not you like monitors or skylights or worried about flashing on the roof, you may have to have it. I'm just putting it out there. You know, it's, I know that this is New England. Anytime you have adjoining walls flashing or whatever. But I think Amy's correct. It's got to be looked at correctly, construction documents, OPMs, and inspections.
Yep, I just wanted to throw it out there. Thank you. I just want to go through. Does anybody else have any? I have other questions. I just want to know. I don't want to take up all the floor time. Anyone else on the team or on the design review team have any questions?
Okay, am I gonna have a chance to go through my slides or?
Sure. You want me to pull those up?
Yeah, pull them up. I think most of them are gonna be pretty quick, but what we're doing is I joined this team to try to come up with a scoring system or a review system where we can just go through the design guidelines as they stand, be pretty objective about it instead of subjective. So I'm going through verbatim what the guidelines are and just noting where the project stands. So I have a couple of open items that I wanted to just close out. This first slide is real quick. Reviewing the previous meetings, there was a conversation about moving the parking towards the street since the setback is exceeded, rather than following the face of the building, move it up towards where the normal setback would be or a line established by the 2 abutting buildings. So this slide was prepared for that. And then the next meeting picked up with, rather than having any parking moved or a discussion about that, there was additional parking added in the back, which is fine. But I was curious, I mean, the purpose of moving this parking towards the street was to get rid of those 6 spaces down in the corner of the wall to try to step out the wall a bit. So was there discussion about that happened in a meeting that I'd missed, or? I guess this is more for the architect team.
I spoke directly with, we mentioned, asked about pulling the parking, and Lori Connors and I had a conversation, I think with the committee, of where the parking had, and the design of the guidelines suggest it's the building facade. Lori, can you suggested it should not be beyond the facade to me. So if I misinterpreted, please point that out to me.
Mark, there is a design requirement. It's a design standard in the zoning bylaw that says that the parking cannot be in front of the facade of the building. So that's in the zoning bylaw.
Right, but that's also something that we're reviewing. Okay, that's fine. I'll just close out that item saying it's not feasible.
Well, it's been waived in almost every other building down there. So if it was something that saved the town a couple $1 million, then, I mean, I think the committees would waive that if that saved money. I mean, it's been done almost all the other parking downtown.
It would have to be a special permit, a special permit.
Okay, so it was something that happened outside the meeting. I know the last meeting, I think it was Mitch, suggested looking at that, just to try to get rid of those back parking spaces on the corner, because that really impacts the wall. So I was kind of surprised to see the terraces going back into the wall instead of out to where the previous parking was. But that's okay. That's my misunderstanding. Okay, that's it. If you want to go to the next slide, Amy. All right, now this is, I'm a design engineer, and I've got some good experience with, setting up factories and stuff with products. This is just a concern that I have. I know when I made this slide, I didn't have a good set of drawings with the drainage system, and I can see you pitching it away from the building to the proper, 1 foot per 10 feet or whatever it is. But then you were talking about having heated pads around there. So I do have a concern that in the event of freezing rain or slush, that those drains might become plugged, and where your street is at 300 feet and the building's at 302 feet, it really doesn't have much differential. So if you have along the road having a snowbank, or just the frozen snow on the parking lot itself, especially if it's slushy that turns solid, start to trap the melt from the heating apron. So I was a little concerned about that, where that water is going to flow. And I see you got drains right at the base of it, so hopefully that covers it. But the main point here is that raising that building by 2 feet, 3 feet, or whatever really does decrease the height of the wall in the back of the building. So it's just something I would have done differently. So maybe you have a good reason for it. So, I guess my question here would be, why not increase it 2 to 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet? I think, you're 60 or 70 feet back from the road. So naturally, 1 foot for every 10 feet would be up 7 feet. I don't think that'd be a problem for the trucks. I see Ashland has about a 5 foot pitch, maybe 6. And Natick has quite a bit also.
Can anyone on the design team speak to that?
Nicole, can you talk about grading a little?
Sure. Yep. So this is related to the truck turning movements and making it easy for the trucks to be able to back into the site. We try to keep around a 3% pitch from the road up to the building, which is where we got our 302 elevation. I think the right of way is around 300 in this location. So we're right around that 3% grade, which is what we were aiming for the truck turning movements.
Okay, and the trucks need to back in because it's not a pull through. Okay, so 3%, that's a good number for me, thank you. The other question was, now this is a heated pad. I worry about puddling and then having a power failure where that might refreeze and stick with the seals on the bottom of the door. I know you've got a backup generator, but I don't know if is this electric, this heating pad, or part of the geothermal system?
We're still working through the HVAC design options with the committee. So we'll have more
Okay,
information
I
on
just
that at another
caution
time.
that, if it is an electric system, I'm coming up with about 250 kilowatts for both pads. And if you do have a power failure, that requires what, a 500 kilowatt generator, which is fairly huge. Geothermal, I don't think you'd have a problem because you'd probably be starting with a ground temperature of 50 degrees, so that should be fine. But just something I wanted to make a note of. Okay, next slide, Amy. Okay, this is about the wall height. I know, I come from an industrial background where if we had a 30-foot wall, OSHA would be all over us about making sure that it's safe. I guess I've still got concerns. And, looking up what the safety heights are, I think a 10-meter wall has almost a 30% fatality rate if somebody were to fall, or especially onto hard pavement. And it's not just accidental falls you have to be concerned about. I know Southborough in their training tower, they had to put deadbolts on the second floor locks to keep people from potentially hurting themselves on purpose. I do worry about that and if we have to go to a larger fence or a curved top fence, with the guard tower and everything on this really gives the building a bad look. I think 42-inch fence we could make look good. So that was just a concern.
Can I just jump into, I think being around the bend from Assabet Park with kids saying, hey, let's go check out the fire station. I feel it's more of a concern the area it's in. I grew up near downtown. I brought my kids to Assabet Park, and I feel like, let's go look at the shiny new fire trucks. They might come back over the hill and be peeking over the fence. And I agree with Mark. You want to make sure it's as safe as possible so no one climbs and falls over onto the pavement.
Yeah, which is part of why I'm making it a priority to try to talk people into raising the building a bit, because it really does decrease the height of that wall. I mean, the numbers go down for serious injury, every foot. So that's my concern on this slide.
Did I jump in one too? I agree with that. On the admin side, if it was raised, I know they say it had to be level because they're driving around the full back now. But I would think that on the east side, it's the firefighters, it's the employee parking. So I would think that they would be cognizant of not blocking the path out. I think it's important to get 2 routes out, but also important to have a safe area and a fire station that people can afford. I don't know if stepping up the building helps or not. But
yeah, I know I had asked for some cost per yard. I guess I don't need that information. We don't need to go into cost at this level. All right, I think we're ready for the next slide. Okay, now this is just about terrain. I think Amy, the architect, pointed out that having a retaining wall, 30 feet of gravel or 30 feet of forest or trees or whatever, actually scrub brush, and then another retaining wall looks incredibly awkward. And I know it's beyond the scope of this team, but there are people looking at downtown beautification. And it is possible, would it be possible if the abutters, or would it work to your advantage if the abutters agreed to get rid of that, save some height on that wall? And on the right-hand slide, I kind of connected like the 310-foot elevations, the 320-foot, 330 to what they would naturally lend as. I think that is a more natural looking terrain. Again, beyond the scope here, and it would be something that would have to be done at a higher level with different boards. But does that advantage you if we were to do that?
I think that's really beyond the scope of what we've been asked to do. We have not looked into the neighboring
Oh, yeah,
properties.
I said that it's beyond the scope here, but I'm just saying if it was done at a different level and we said we can do this, would that help to decrease the height of the wall?
Or decrease.
I don't know without doing real engineering. I think Nicole talked about how we have to keep chasing. There's a substantial grade change going up that hill, and how we keep chasing and chasing and chasing, but the grades just keep going up and up and up. So, you know, I can't speak to that. I don't know. We have not,
Okay.
we've not studied that.
Okay, that's fine. And the bottom two slides are just a couple of options that I think it would open up. Yeah, you know, because with that terrain, you would actually be if we're sloping up the building, and I'm assuming, you know, I make some assumptions here that we've stepped up the garage bays, you know, 5 or 6 feet, 8 feet, and then stepped up the offices above that. Now that creates a nice terrain where the parking for the public is now at a level approaching the neighboring parking lot. And assuming that we could eliminate the mound in between the two. There are some towns that specify that you get a bonus advantage if you can connect to abutting parking lots. We don't have that, so then it also matches the height of the Monroe entrance, possibly. So you could connect the parking and really add a lot of public parking there. And then on the right, there's the possibility of angling the building, which works for your building massing somewhat. And I apologize, the outline of the building is wrong here. That was from a different concept. But that allows trucks to pull in from Monroe and restore the drive-through feature. So these are just ideas. I know they're not being implemented. Your design is pretty much finalized. So we're going to do the scorecard based on what you're submitting. But these are just going to be noted as possibilities. Let's see. Yeah, next slide, Amy. Okay, so this slide really shows the idea of elevating from 302 to 308 from the curb, the sidewalk level, to decrease the wall by that 8 feet or whatever it is. Then stepping up. I noticed you did this in Ashland where the bay is actually up higher than the offices. I think it's only about 5 feet, maybe or 4. But any little bit would help decreasing that wall. So I'm illustrating that here. And then wrapping around the parking lot, increasing that even further, never violating more than the 1 foot for 10 feet. And I'm sorry, these are crude PowerPoint cut and paste. So just ideas. Let's see if I had a question on this. Yeah, I don't think there's any particular advantage to matching the height of the neighboring parking lots from your perspective. So there's really no question there. Next slide, Amy. I think we're almost done. Yeah, this is just the same thing. And I'm doing a Franken sketch here where I'm trying to, flip the building. Really, the last slide is. Let's go to the next slide because there's nothing new here, Amy. Is that the?
That's all I have here.
Okay, so this is the massing slide. Okay. So as the guidelines call out larger buildings should incorporate architectural design tricks or whatever to try to make the building look smaller. This building, being a public building and all, sometimes you don't want it to look smaller. I think what you've got here actually does a pretty good job of looking bigger than it actually is because of all the height and the length is all visible from the street. So just for what if scenario, I did a thing where I basically took the back of the building and made it the front of the building and went through the scorecard to see how it compares. With this having the second level step back from the front, it really decreases the appearance of the size of the building. Having the elevations different between it, and you do the shadowing trick where you match the terrain of the higher side on the lower side, gives the optical illusion that the garage bays are actually shorter than they are. And then this also shows the offices pushed way back from the street. And of course, what I'm working with here, it doesn't really illustrate that very well, but because the training room now is set way back off the street, it actually doesn't, it's on a different focal plane. So when you're looking at the front of the building, it appears to be much smaller. So it's just doing some rough math on that. Roughly, the building appears to be about 50,000 square feet with the parent massing, and the way it is. And if it was, some of these tricks are incorporated, it could appear to be a 20,000 square foot building. And those are rough numbers. I didn't actually scale it. So I guess the only question I would have here is the philosophy incorporated by the design team intended to make the building look bigger or smaller?
So the design team worked really, I guess I just want to take a step back because some of the things that you're showing here would have real implications for the operations of the department. Our mandate working with the department was always to come up with a plan that worked with their operations. So, I appreciate what you're trying to do with the grading here and all, but that would have implications for the way the department functions. When I look at the parking lot, for example, on the side of the building raised up above the first floor windows, that says to me that all around that first floor, along the side and in the back, there would be no access to natural light for any of the offices. So we're talking about all the employees, the deputy, the chief, the conference room. All of those offices would be without any access to natural light because the grade would be rising
the
up
conference
above
room
their
doesn't
windows.
have windows on that wall. So that's why I was saying utilize, it looks like
The training room, correct, on that wall does have a couple of windows, but on the back of the building where all the administration wing is, where all the individual offices are, those are all going back in the building where you have the grade rising up as well. And so that would take out all of the windows for all of those employee office spaces all along that wall.
okay,
That would have
I'm sorry. I just to be clear though, I mean, you do have the back bays that are at the same elevation. So you do have a retaining wall behind the building that I can't show. So you do pick up that grade on the left in the back of the building with a smaller retaining wall there, just not visible from the street.
So
I
don't know that we could get the grades to work. I think I understand what you're suggesting here is that we still have the front and back access for the elevations and we raise the public parking area and we still manage to have a connection between those two. And I think that from a grading standpoint and from a truck movement standpoint would be a challenge. And we would still be sloping the parking up along that wall, which would have an impact with the windows into these spaces. So I think it's important that, we're trying to create a building that works for the fire department, for the people who work in that space and is a healthy, safe, functional, operationally fit environment for the firefighters to work in. And that was the number one thing in our mind as we were creating the floor plans for this building. And some of these moves would definitely have an impact on all of those goals.
Okay, this is just a mirror image though. there'd definitely be some steps and different elevator stop, granted. But really, the question to you is actually, this is just a hypothetical. The question is, are you attempting to make the building look the size it is, or bigger than it is, or smaller than it is? I mean, and this is in our design guidelines, so it's a checkbox. So if you say, you're trying to make it look its natural appearance, that's fine. You don't get the plus. If you're trying to make it look bigger, well, where our guidelines say it should look smaller, then you get a minus, and that's it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a scoring system, and it's under development, and it's not even going to apply to this project, so it's more academic.
We certainly, in breaking the building down, the facade down into different components, that's a strategy that designers use to try to break down the massing by having walls, push and pull, by introducing the different trim lines, by having different variations in window patterns, by having different material changes. Those are all techniques that designers use to try to break down massing. So if we had tried to make this look as big as possible, it would have been a very different elevation. The goal was to try to break this down.
So just be natural. That's fine. And I know you did the jogs in the walls to attempt that, and I think you actually did a very good job. As far as my scoring, I have a sample scorecard that I went through, and you actually score very highly on most things. And it was just the questions on the massing that normally don't get applied to buildings because we have very few buildings that we call large. So it's just kind of going through it. Part of these design ideas to get rid of on this hypothetical scorecard that isn't going to be used on this project. There's, a couple of negative things, or things you lose points for. Say this was a point system. Hypothetically, you started with 20 points, you lose a point for anything. You come up with a final score of, let's say, 15 or something like that. We just pass it on to the next board. It doesn't, and it's used for comparison to other buildings. The negative things that you have against you, of course, are really basic, and we would make a recommendation for variances to be approved. But the safety concerns would be the retaining wall. I think Bob Federico had mentioned about the snow sliding off the roof where a gabled end there or stepping back that wall helps that. So it's just something we note. Flooding potential. It's there. I think an insurance company would point that out. I know they pointed it out on similar docs that I've been involved with. You say the building massing, things like that. So actually, from my perspective, is I'm trying to reason out why things are the way they are to help you, get these things approved, not to hurt you. So I just, it's more for conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
Thank you.
Amy. I just had a couple quick questions because I know it's 10:20. Did we ever have any, did you come back with what type of materials are in the banding? I know bricks are at the top part of the building, but then you show the banding and the bottom part of the building and the
Actually,
roof area.
Amy,
Yep.
Amy, why don't you take down the slide so we're not looking at this Franken drawing?
Sure. I was just looking at the building, actually. I was wondering if you had any more input on what type of materials.
Yeah, so I did mention it, I think, and we talked to the committee about it last night. We've had a number of meetings with masonry suppliers since we last met with you. We've looked at countless dozens and dozens of different options. We still haven't found the option that we want to recommend to the committee. We have additional meetings actually today to look at some new samples, and we're hoping to wrap that up pretty soon so that we can present a material palette to the building committee. And then once that is presented to the building committee, we can bring that to you.
Okay, thanks. So around the apparatus bay doors, is that still metal or that might change?
We're still looking at options.
Okay. All right. All right. So it does sound like there are a couple of things we still have left on our to have you come back, but I'm wondering, Bob has his hand up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Amy. I want to go back to Mark's idea about potentially raising the apparatus bay floor elevation. I'm going to share a true story with you. I was on the building committee when we built the Grafton Fire Station almost 20 years ago. The designers came to us because it was next to a wetland. They wanted to raise the elevation floor by 4 feet. And we said, okay. But the designers never took into account the added pitch from the floor of the apparatus bay to the gutter of the street, and then from the gutter of the street to the crown on the road. So when the building was 99% complete, we decided to drive the tower through the building and try to get out that front door, and it failed. The back of the tower would have hit the pavement. So they actually had to regrade the entire front apron and a section of a state road to the tune of about $120,000 to get it fixed. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to raise the floor of the apparatus bay, do a damn good job of making sure that that pitch and the pitch that's in the road currently is going to allow for that angle of attack and angle of retreat on that truck to work. Okay? Because it's not going to do you any good to spend $20 million on a fire station that you can't get the trucks out of. Thank you.
We have time. I actually have another question, and members might actually have one more question. Oh, Lisa, did you just have your hand up?
Yeah, there were two things, if you don't mind. The first question I was going to ask early on was the lettering, the metal letters that are going to be on the face of the building that say Northborough Fire. And I do like that look. What material is going to be used, and how much bleeding through the years will start to come down onto the brick, like we've seen in some cases, where there's just drain down from the letters because you've got a brick surface. It reacts to more different items. Like if it were copper, obviously it would be aqua. And so I was concerned about that, what materials you were thinking of using for that. And the other thing that I really would like to see, which we've never seen, is do you have a kind of a close-up design of what the entrance is going to look like? Like we've all looked at this big picture, but we don't have this. You have to come into the building. Part of the building should be welcoming who's ever coming in. Again, it's on the main street. I think part of what we'd like to be able to do in design review is have, help to say, okay, these are kind of the important elements. We haven't seen that. So I don't know if the next time you come, if you've already made it and showed it to the other committee, I don't know. But I think it would be very nice to see that and to see how the walkways come and what you're doing with the walkways. And again, on an elevation level, how that will present itself. And then my comment before we're ready to go is that I really appreciate the fact that you've done so much and you've worked so hard. And I think the harder part for us is that we're kind of coming after the fact. Normally the designer comes and we work together and we say, okay, this might be great or that might be great, but that's not happening. You're working with a committee that doesn't concern themselves on the design, with the exception of there are two committee members that were former design committee members. So I'm kind of a little disappointed that our legacy hasn't carried through well. But thank you so much for your work and efforts and listening to us today.
Mm-hmm. So for the letters, that will be part of the material palette that we'll be presenting when we figure out the masonry. The whole thing will be a palette that we'll put together. There are a few different options for things that we can look at. They will be some type of metal. They could be a painted stainless. They could be an anodized. We'd need to look into that and get a little more information. Part of the challenge for us through this process is that, we know that the design review committee likes to meet with people early and often. And so we're coming early, but we don't have all the answers for you at this point in time. We are just wrapping up schematic design right now. There's for a building of this size, there's a lot of design work that still needs to be done. And the material palette, I sound like a broken record saying, we're working on it, but it's true. It takes a lot of effort to figure out what these materials are going to be. And what those materials end up being is going to influence the detailing around that main entrance and what that arch actually looks like and how it's all put together. So we have not shown any enlarged detailed drawings to the committee yet. We haven't shown any wall sections of exactly what the size of the masonry is going to be and whether it's going to be recessed or projected out, whether it's going to have special shapes. None of that information has been even drawn in our office yet. We have conversations, we talk about it, but that is still to come once we come up with a material palette and we know what materials we have to work with and what's possible with them. So that's all I can say at this point, is that we're working on it, and that's going to be some of our focus in design development.
Great, thank you.
Dave, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yep, I think we actually have to spend some time on the building design. We've spent kind of on everything else. But also I'm going to be getting kicked out of here because they were gracious enough to let me get in here with the yacht. And this restaurant's going to be opening up pretty soon. And they're kicking me off. I'm on the gas dock and I'm occupying the entire dock here and giving me the nasty looks. So I'm going to have to fly out of here pretty soon because I'm occupying their entire dock. This is the only place I have Wi-Fi.
I would have one thing, and I'm going to add it, but you can go before that. But I wanted to ask if it sounds like they're going to be in front of the planning board in April, and I'm wondering, since you have so many things to find out about the materials, and you have to meet with the fire station committee again, should your next meeting with us be closer to like 2 weeks before the planning board? You know, I think last night you talked about you not meeting in March, maybe. And that way it's closer to the final design, right? And the questions will be answered.
Janet, you have the master schedule.
Yes, I haven't, Amy, I haven't had a chance since last night to put a new
Right.
schedule together, but we need time to work on all these details and get all the materials. So we're going to reschedule a bunch of meetings. We're going to stick with the zoning board. We're still planning on meeting with the planning board because Jim and Nicole have been working hard diligently to meet those deadlines. But you know, I did mention that the next meeting after that is in May, and we really don't want to wait that long. We'll be, you know, we still have to maintain a schedule to get working drawings complete for bidding in the fall. And just so everybody knows, every time we delay, if we delay the bid process, we're going to add more than millions of dollars to the project, which we don't want to do. So we want to keep this process moving, but I will be looking at those schedules and I've got to combine all of the things. We have to have a daylight meeting about finishes. We have a bunch of things to do, but I will get back to you and to the committee with a new schedule shortly. So that's really what I can say about it, but we need to do work, have time to do work. So.
Okay, so if you have to jump off, Dave, you can. I do want to share one more thing while I have everybody here. Let me see. And this is probably starts with a question for the chief about operational. I had a question on the training tower. You know, it's not really a hose tower, it's a training tower. And I was wondering if, like Southborough, if it's truly a training tower, then it should probably, for the cost, include outdoor training. You know, Southborough had doors and windows, so you could do second story ladder rescue training. Was there any consideration to put it on the back where the mezzanine stairs are? Because I read that you can use a mezzanine as staging area for training drills, door and window openings, manholes, bailout drills. Even when we went to Southborough, they had a room underneath that was totally blackened, and you went in and they did rescue training like they were in a house where you couldn't see. I was wondering, was any of that planned for the training area in Northborough?
So a couple things. I don't know who you talked to in Southborough or what they told you, so I'm kind of at a deficit there. So I don't know what that conversation was, or if that person that you spoke with really had any insight into why they did what they did. With that said, I can tell you that our mezzanine area is going to be designed with the training components. We already discussed that with the architects. That's part of the intent. The training tower will be a separate training components, and we'll have some of the same abilities that you're talking about. If we choose to use the exterior for laddering, we can, but any of our bailout training, any of that will be able to be on the interior of the building.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to ask. I wasn't part of that conversation, but I know if we're gonna use a training tower, we might as well use it to the best of our abilities.
That's definitely the intent, is to use it for, to put fire department connections in there, to be able to stretch hose up in there. I did speak with the deputy, or he sent me a text to reference the drain in the fire station at Southborough. He indicated that that station was designed without fire department or police department input, and they had didn't realize that they were going to need a drain for the hose, and they had to go back in and fix that drain, and that's what the drain is that they're talking about. So it's not that, it's what we've already talked about designing.
Okay, I just wanted, he threw out some ideas that, to make sure that we didn't do this, follow the same mistakes. So I just wanted to put them out there while we were able to talk. All right, this is all I wanted to share. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And Janet, I'm sure you'll be in touch with Lori.
I will.
Set up the next meeting.
Yep, I will be in touch with Lori. We'll submit the zoning board as we discussed, and continue on in the process. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
7.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Okay, so it's 10:30. I don't think we have time for anything else today. Dave had to jump off. And
Can you put 5 minutes into maybe what Mark has put together for a
oh,
rubric?
sure, the report card.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to it, Mark? And
Yeah, I didn't really feel confident showing it in front of these guys because it's just my input so far, and I know we need to talk about it together. But what the scorecard does is, and it's a starting point, and definitely want you guys to have input on this. I just took the basically 9 separate sections of the lines and put them, cut and pasted the verbiage into a checklist. And then, had to keep it simple, I had to, change a few things around. No idea what the scoring system is going to be on it. I'll let you guys just decide that. The things at the end, or at the end, I added things like, I know they're not in the official guidelines now, like the awnings. I put that in the bonus section, just so that it works to their advantage if they do incorporate them naturally. In safety issues, I thought were something important that needed to be concerned, just different comments that people had made to include those just on the checklist. So that's the starting point. I definitely want, you guys need to come up with other things other than what I put, as far as the bonus points and other issues, clarifications of the verbiage. I know a lot of the guidelines are in the process of being changed probably. So, that type of thing. What I did with my printout of it.
I think you emailed it to me. I could share it, but after this meeting, I could
yeah, if you
email
want to call it up, I
personally.
mean, you can. That's okay. It's just out of order. Yeah, could you share it? Just I don't know if you want to put the one. I
No.
guess no, don't do the one that I've made my comments on, because I don't want to bias anybody.
That's true.
So the blank one, just.
Did it go to my town email, or should I find it? If you can resend it.
I think so.
I thought I saw it last night, but I can't find it now. Sometimes the town email, it gets buried, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Within other emails, they link them together.
Oh, I think I accidentally sent it to the wrong one. Well, which is funny because I asked you to forward it if you thought it was appropriate. So sorry about that.
Well, sorry, I didn't forward it either. I
Well,
don't
I
think.
say you probably didn't even see it. I guess you did. So sorry, I can't see the screen right now, let's see.
I could forward it to everybody after the meeting. I'll find it. What it is like a check sheet. He used all the design review, the checklist we're supposed to go through, and then we score it. And I think it's a good idea. And you had mentioned it's like, will be fair to every applicant, because if they meet the criteria, then they move along. And if they don't, if they meet early and often, then they can work to meet the criteria. And I don't know, it's a scoring system, like a rubric.
Yeah. It just, this project is a good example because it really does cover the large building portion of the things. But I say, we can't hold this against the fire department or you know, that team. I mean,
Right.
so it's intended to help only, not hurt.
Well, you know what, I
But-
mean, there's so much that we really need to cover. Can we have another meeting, you know, in the next 2 weeks to talk about this, to talk about the signage that the Board of Selectmen talked about, and maybe do the minutes, have all three of those things taken care of? What do you think, Amy?
Yeah, Lori said she has to go down to the meeting, but can you hold on just a second? Let me look at my calendar.
While you're doing that, I just want to make a comment that I think is kind of important. On the November 30th minutes, we have sandwich boards will be allowed in downtown as temporary signs as long as they aren't blocking sidewalks. I think the main concern I have right now is ADA compliancy. Right, those sidewalks that we have, and Laura can correct me if I'm incorrect, are now more narrow than the general width that would take a wheelchair and a sandwich board, especially in the downtown areas. So that if you're putting it out there and even saying that you don't block the sidewalk, sometimes nobody realizes it. Somebody walks by, they move it. Like if you're even going in front of, let's say the Brilla Coffee and that liquor store, that whole section is so narrow that I'm afraid that if it's not wide enough of a sidewalk, that it's not meeting the ADA compliancy, and that individual he'd either have to try to move it, or she, or there would be some sort of a problem with it. So I think that instead of leaving it so blanket, that we probably have to be a little bit more specific. What do you think, Laurie?
So the requirement is that you have to leave 3 feet of clear distance for folks to pass. So we could specify the 3 feet.
Okay, at least something that would be a little bit more protective of those people in a wheelchair. Because I know that right now we're talking about being ADA compliant, and we see all those little red pads that are put at the end of the driveway meets are all being ripped up by the snowplow. And I think we're going to have to do a lot more sidewalk compliance repair and take care of that. But
While you have sign discussion up, you know, one of the things on the agenda was supposed to be the sign and design guidelines, but one thing I was thinking, and I don't know if you guys agree, I'm thinking of bumping the sign bylaw, but this year's town meeting, we have the MBTA, we have a lot of, and there was some concerns at the last planning board meeting, you know, we had talked about how the design review wants nice awnings to make the downtown look better. And then there were other board members who were like, no, I think we should be able to let them write whatever they want on their awning. So then it would be like extra, I feel it would make it busier downtown if all of a sudden now we have awnings with writing. And I felt it was going against what we were trying to do for design review. But since there was pushback with the planning board and even MPIC, Rick Leaf came and he, you know, backed up the MBTA bylaw and others, but he didn't say anything about the sign bylaw. I have concern with bringing it forth to town meeting without that support. And I really don't want to do what happened 2 years ago and have people stand up and have questions and concerns. So I'm wondering if the sign bylaw just needs a little more time and maybe we have a public hearing on it, because it seems to be such a hot button item. I actually started getting reservations at the last meeting, and I thought, let's just pull the sign bylaw and enforce what we have and go from there.
I agree with you. I think, and I just feel rushed. I'm sure Lori feels the same way. There's so many things coming forward on our plate that I think we need to have it. I'd like to see like a dry run. I'd love to see a public input on it. I think that's part of what we want to do, is to get, the public involved. And I think that would probably help even to take one of those next articles off, because we're up to 64 articles on the town meeting floor right now. So, and there may be a couple more. So it might be nice to, let's kind of take a little bit of time. I love what Lori, you've done. I looked at the design guidelines and the pictures, and it really looks very nice. I mean, it's getting to be quite a nice representation of what we like. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
And I think-
actually, I wanted to offer that, as an engineer, you sat out as a draftsman, so I can do drawings for you if you want. I know we had talked, or I heard you talk about multiple generations of Xerox copies being in other standards and stuff like that. So if you want me to do drawings, just let me know. I have nothing else to do.
All right. I think it's great. I mean, I think that gives everybody a little bit more breathing room. And as I say, when it comes to, even talking about the minutes, and you just see something, well, we talked about so much that day. And we talked a lot about sandwich boards, but my thoughts were like, oh my God, when you look at the downtown area, and it really is narrow. And then of course it's a pretty dangerous location too, because it's so close to the road. That I think you had a great idea of just pulling that for this one in April, because we just got so much on the plate for everybody. And
But I think it's good to keep the design guidelines, though. I think keep going with the design guidelines. The signs are keep coming forward. And I don't want to stop it. I definitely want the sign bylaw to go forward, but I don't know if we're ready right now, if MPIC didn't back it up and there's some pushback from the planning board, I'm concerned.
Okay. I'm in support of that. Mark?
Yeah.
Laurie, you like that idea? One less thing to
Yeah, that's fine. There were a couple of parts of the sign bylaw that the planning board wanted removed. And then there were also some changes that town council wanted, because there were certain things that we wanted to do that he thought were going to be problematic from a legal standpoint. So I made those changes. When it came to certainly we could make the modification on the sandwich board provision that you had suggested. But if you'd rather just pull it and we can work on it longer and maybe submit it for fall, then that's fine too.
That's what I was kind of thinking. I don't know. I just felt I hate to rush it if there are people pushing back already.
I think it's also important to hear the feedback.
Right.
And maybe the sign bylaw is going too far in certain categories, and there isn't support to go there.
Right.
In which case, those changes should be removed.
Right.
Because you want to make sure that the sign bylaw captures what the people of Northborough want.
Right.
Definitely.
That's why an input session would be great, because we're guessing, but we're not really getting deep input from them. So we could do another survey too. I mean, that survey, I think, is a great thing, because more people I think they're getting more used to them. They're taking a little bit more time to react to them. I think that's the better way to offer it up. Not
And a
saying,
survey with a visual too.
yeah,
So you see what's coming forward.
right. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
So,
And
all right.
I was feeling pressured because we have until March 11th till it closes the warrant. So I wanted to try to make a decision before March 11th, and it's already almost March 1st.
So you'll bring that to the next planning board meeting? What's that, the 5th?
Yeah, we meet Monday, and I'll just mention that we're gonna hold off till the fall town meeting, and then we won't add it to the warrant.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you want to, I don't know if you guys have time next Thursday where we just talk about, we get those minutes done And we could talk about the scorecard. I could send it out to everybody. So we
Yes.
could go through the scorecard, the minutes, and we won't have anything else.
I like that idea.
It won't be a long meeting. We'll have to set a time limit. But I think the fire station is so important. We had to listen to, hear from everybody. So I thank everybody for staying until 11 o'clock.
No, I think the fire department one is good. I mean, we definitely don't want to be the obstacle there because a lot of people want this. I mean, and they have bigger battles to fight too, so.
Right. I don't know if you heard the price tag, Lori.
Price tag, I didn't.
It's not the 20 million Bob said. 44 to 50 million.
50
Oh,
million. And that's just,
but
that's not counting the extra stuff on the wall and the materials and stuff, so. Oh, okay, so we're looking at March 7th?
Next week, let's see. March 7th. Yep.
Okay, can you do
8:30.
that? 8:30?
I can, yes.
Okay, Mark, can you, and if Dave's not back, he doesn't have to be here for the minutes. I'll tell him about it. If he wants to be, he can be here. Send
Well,
him the
he can-
report card.
Yeah, he can do the report card probably just by email too, if he can't be
Right.
here.
He said he's on his way.
He
Okay,
can't do
what
it
was-
by
what was the
meeting.
date?
but He can't
7th?
do it by email because that's a
March
violation of the open meeting law, so.
But he could send it to you, Lori, right? If you had
Yeah,
comments.
send
on
it to you.
report
That's
card.
what yeah,
Yes.
what we've done on some other teams is we all sent them to the town staff person and they compiled it onto one thing.
Yes, he can do that.
And then, so sending it to you and then you send it out?
We could all do that to Lori to save time for next week. If we look at Mark's report card and have comments. Send them to Lori.
Yeah, well, you're definitely gonna have additions, things to add to the bottom of it. I mean, I really briefly just, said signs comply with bylaws or something like that with a checkbox. You might want to elaborate on that verbiage, or add different things. I mean, I'm trying to remember what the things I added at the end were, which are, for bonus points are, sorry, these are out of order. Bonus
All right,
points are-
while you're looking for that, I just wanted to point out that I think it's really important to distinguish between things that are mandatory. So those are design things that are in the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
And design guidelines, which are voluntary. It's just
Right.
a guidance. So they shouldn't be penalized for not adhering to all of the design guidelines.
Yes,
So maybe if you could do a 2-level where, if you're gonna assign points, the design guidelines should be bonus points. They shouldn't be penalized.
exactly.
As design standards, they should be penalized for not adhering to those. But there may be good reason for not, and that's why they have the ability to ask for waivers. So it may end up being a superior design to ask for a waiver than to comply with the standard. So I think some flexibility in your report card is important.
Yeah, that's what I say. I found the bonus section I have, and it's just kind of, I put awnings there, because, they're bonus points. You should never count against somebody if they can't work them in. That's fine. I put solar ready, or including solar in the design, just bonus points, because things we want to encourage. Geothermal could get a bonus point, a noted architect design, things like that. Kind of whatever we can add there, the more bonus points, I think the better. And then, yeah, definitely, I purposely cut and pasted the guidelines now. I'm not real familiar with the verbiage as, should and shall or must, that type of stuff. And Laurie's going to be good at, flagging that for me. So, and then I have a pull down menu. So you have checks, check minuses, check pluses and things like that. And then as we review them, you can highlight, like when you get an inspection sticker, you get a black R means you can still drive the car. Red R means it's critical. So we can color code things and stuff like that. We're wide open.
I like it. Could you add some of the standards in this as well? Like, You know, one of them, wasn't it a flat wall? Like isn't there like a breakup of a flat wall? Like how many feet?
Yeah, that's
Flat,
something
flat.
we don't include them in our town's guidelines too much. But that we have a thing about talking about massing, whether it's a large building. We don't define what a large building is. But the definitions are pretty standard. And then one of the things on a large building to avoid is, am I allowed to say that? I mean, some towns say any continuous wall of 50 feet, should be interrupted with something. And
I
the
think we
fire
have
department,
that. I think
some town actually said 100. So, but that includes any surface, any wall, any roof, any retaining wall. We don't have anything about retaining walls in our guidelines, but some towns do. So,
yeah, that's good. But I think, Laura, don't we already have something with the flat length of building space uninterrupted?
Well, like I said, if it's in the zoning bylaw, so you want to look at the development, site development section, those are the standards. So if it says shall, that's a standard. If it's in the guidelines, but it's not in the zoning bylaw, those are completely voluntary. So they do not have to adhere to those.
yeah.
But I
So
really
if they
have to
do, they
go.
would.
I'm sorry, I've got another meeting, so I have
Okay.
to.
We have to make a motion to close this
Oh,
meeting.
we have to make a
We
motion
closed
because
the
we haven't
last one.
closed it from the last one.
We're
Right.
still going from last meeting. All right, do we have a motion to close the hearing? We'll meet next week at 8:30. I'll send out the scorecard.
So moved. Mark
Good.
second.
All right, I'll second.
All right, roll call. Lisa Maselli,
Here, hi.
Eric McMenamy,
Aye.
and Amy's and I. Thanks for hanging on, Laura. We'll see you next week.
All
Put the
right,
time
thank
at 10:15.